Hi there, Russell. Welcome to the Reading Fabricator, and it's been a long time since I posted, but I have been getting some reading done. Got about five or four books on the go, and most recently I finished a book that's a bit different from what I normally read, and that is this nice, beautiful hardcover here of Nina Simone's Gum by Warren Ellis. Not the comic book writer, but rather the multi-instrumentalist and composer Warren Ellis, from most known from the band Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. He's also collaborated multiple times with Nick Cave on films such as The Assassination of Jesse James and The Road. So I consider him a bit of a genius actually when it comes to music. And I didn't even know he wrote a book until I discovered it at Crow Books, which is this bookstore in Perth. And yeah, it took my interest. Just the idea of the title, Nina Simone's Gum. And it's a quick read. You could actually read this in a couple of hours if you want to, because it's a combination of things. It's almost like a multimedia project, but in written form. So you've got pages of memoir, then you also got pages of pictures which are part of the story. You've also got pages of text messages and emails, and it all comes together quite nicely to form this cohesive narrative of almost what's considered to be an obsession of sorts. The idea of obsession over this, well, in this case, a piece of gum, but it could be anything really. And he's actually, I'm pretty sure he had help writing this, but as it stands, it's pretty beautifully written. There's some wonderfully emotional passages in this. The whole thing centers around a performance given by Nina Simone, a rare performance which was given in 1999, considered one of her last performances in Britain, and apparently one of the greatest as well. It was all set up through Nick Cave, sort of brings together all these artists for some sort of music festival, and she gives this performance, and it starts out a bit weary. She's hobbling onto stage. People aren't sure of it. The first song sort of, she sort of is struggling with her voice, but then out of nowhere she just belts it out of the park and delivers an unequivocally brilliant performance, and just everyone is in rapture. It's a small stadium. I think it's like something like 1,200 people in this room, but everyone's mesmerized. And when she finishes the performance, she gets up, she leaves the stage, and as everyone is cheering and starting to pile out, I think it was Nick or someone else who looks to the stage and almost sees this, almost just entranced, this Warren Ellis, who is in a trance of sorts, just crawling onto the stage, goes up to her piano, and she's got this piece of gum on a cloth or a towel, and he wraps it up and takes it with him. Think like Gollum of the Ring, something like that. And yeah, he's had it for 20 years, and he's only ever looked at it twice. He kept it in his possession. He's never actually opened it and looked at it multiple times. And the book details moments before that and years after that. So this book takes place over the course of like 40 or 50 years. So it's quite a huge piece of time actually, and it's amazing actually. I would have preferred if he just ditched the gum altogether and wrote just a memoir on his life, because he has had quite a life, with moments where the way he's written it, it's just so beautiful, the imagery. For example, the very opening passage here talks about how him and his brother, when they were kids, and this was in, I can't remember if it was Victoria or South Australia, um, they're sleeping, but then they wake up and they look out the window, and there is a camper van, just camper vans, all these people dressed in clown costumes having a cookout. And he describes, the flora of Australia, like the gum trees, you got the fence there, and they're just all just running amok. And it's really, really just bizarre imagery. You wouldn't think this was actually happening. And when the father comes in, tells them to go to bed, and when they get up the next morning, they go outside to investigate, and it's almost as if they were never there. It's almost as if they hallucinated the whole thing, even though it was real. So there's things like that peppered throughout the book, where you just keep on reading because you want to know what happens next. Just really, really interesting imagery and beautifully written. There's his fascination with composing as well, and there's all these different side stories about how he came into the music business. It was either go to university and study with the violin, or become a manager at McDonald's. He follows a girl to Europe as all people do. And while he's in Europe, he travels through England up north to Scotland and just busks on the streets. And through busking, he meets people who invite him into their almost like a workhouse type thing, and they teach him how to properly play the violin, how to perform songs of their culture. And through that, he sort of gets a bit of a reputation, and then he starts traveling throughout Europe, just busking and just living sort of the low life type thing and just practicing. He forms the band The Dirty Three, which is a pretty, almost like a cult band. And then in the 90s, he joins up with Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and starts performing with them. And there's a lot more than that going on. It's really, really good. But as I said before, this is a book about obsession, about just your dedication to a craft or to an item or to anything. And there's more things like that he's dedicated to, that he's always thinking about. He also talks about his relationship with people that he's met in the past and present, and the book details him talking about these people and then sending emails, actual copies of emails to these people that he hasn't spoken to in sometimes even decades, and how it reinvigorates a friendship. There is just a lot going on. It's a fascinating book. It's unlike anything I've actually read before, or especially compared to this year where it's been mostly fiction. Probably the only closest thing I've read is The Men Who Stare at Goats, but that's purely because it's also non-fiction, but it could be any more different than this. But the way he talks about Nina Simone, it's almost, she is a fascinating individual. So if you ever get a chance, check her out. Her music's pretty good. She's a very, I wouldn't say avant-garde, but she's got a very particular style of music. But there was this talk about how when one of the sound mixers went to go check on her before she went on through the performance, she said something along the lines of, "I want some Rogaine, I want some cocaine, I want some champagne, I want some sausages," sort of thing. She has a very strong personality. She's always the biggest person in the room, even if she's small, and even if she's old during that performance. But where the gun comes into play is that in 2019, Nick Cave got in touch with Warren Ellis and asked him if he had anything to put on show, because there was a museum, I can't remember where, but it's in Europe, and they wanted to do a sort of an archive of all the Nick Cave collectives from his band and from personal usage as well, and put them on display in a museum. So he asked Warren Ellis if he had anything to contribute, and he says, "Oh, I got this, I got that, but I've also got the gum." And Nick's like, "Really, you got the gum?" And it's actually in text message form, sort of thing. So I'll read it out to you. It's quite hilarious, actually. Okay, so this is pretty early on. This is page 8 of the book. This is in August 2019, and here's the proof here, sort of like the messages on the phone. Yeah. So Nick says, "Hey Warren, just getting the exhibition in Copenhagen together. It is vast. Do you have anything that might be good to include?" Warren replies, "Fabulous, Nick. Let me think. There's the old violin of mine that turned up in Bleden's basement recently, that one that's all carved up. And I have Nina Simone's chewing gum as well, that kind of thing." Nick replies, "Give me both. You still have Nina Simone's chewing gum?" "Totally. It's still in the towel she wiped her brow with at that concert." And Nick replies, "You worry me sometimes." And it goes on from there, and you can tell there's a beautiful relationship going on. And if you haven't seen it, do check out the documentary. Or it's not really a documentary; it's more like a fictionalized documentary. It's about a day in the life of Nick Cave, 20,000 Days on Earth. Very well done. There's a couple of other documentaries. I think another one coming out this year as well. But that one was quite good, and you sort of get to see the recording process of, I think it was, I can't remember what the album was called, but it's got the wonderful song Jubilee Street in it, which is one of my all-time favorite Nick Cave songs. I still consider Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds to be in my top 3 favorite bands of the last 25 years. They're absolutely wonderful, and Jubilee Street is a fantastic song. But when you see the recording process for that, and you see their obsession for that as well, it's kind of like the obsession in this book of Nina Simone's gum. So as it stands, this is it's a fabulous read. It was a bit pricey. I think I paid like $40 for this hardcover here, even though it's more like a multimedia written presentation rather than an actual book. But if you're a fan of Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and Warren Ellis, then by all means give it a shot, because it's yeah, it just gives you an idea into their thinking process, their creative process, their obsession process. And I know I keep using the word obsession a lot, but that's truly what this book is about. And yeah, I loved every minute of it. And I'm going to close out by reading a passage at the very, very end because I think it's an absolutely wonderful passage. And it's where he goes, just before he performs at a concert, he goes to a graveyard to see Beethoven's tombstone. It's absolutely beautiful writing. It's about a page and a half long, and it's not a spoiler or anything like that because it has nothing to do with the book. But I just think it's probably the best part of the book. So it's almost like you read the entire book just to get to this end. And as good as the rest of it is, this is just on another level. And it takes place, it's called 1st of November 2017, All Souls Day. So I'll finish up by reading that. I was in Vienna on tour of the Bad Seas for the Skeleton Tree Tour, and I decided it was finally time to go to see Beethoven's grave. After soundcheck before the concert, I hadn't seen him since the 80s. I sensed I needed to go to him. I took a taxi to Zenshaw Friedhof Cemetery, Beethoven's final resting place. He actually had 3 burials. I pulled up to the gate, stepped from the car, and bought some simple flowers bound with string and pine cones from a caravan near the entrance. It just so happened that it was the Day of the Dead, so the cemetery was full of people, families. The sun had set and the sky was clear. There were candles and fresh flowers everywhere and visitors all over the grounds, walking around, having picnics at their relatives' tombstones, laughter, joy. I started walking through the cemetery with my GPS, trying to work out where Beethoven was buried. Grave 29 in Group 32A. I quickly got lost, which is typical of me. A woman in her 20s came up to me and smiled. "Can I help you?" I must have looked like as I was lost. "I'm looking for Beethoven's grave," I said. She smiled. "I'm going there as well. Do you want to go together? I know where it is." It struck me that she took on the task of leading this long-bearded, middle-aged man in a suit and large dark corrective lens glasses through a darkening cemetery quite casually. Almost like she was expecting me. I don't know. I just wanted to see the grave and lay the flowers. I put my iPhone in my pocket and followed her lead. We walked around the cemetery for a bit, then we turned a corner and in plain view was a towering obelisk in a cul-de-sac with Beethoven carved in large Gothic font, surrounded by flickering candles and flowers. As soon as I saw it, the atmosphere changed and the sky glowed with candlelight. I felt the lighted sky fall on me, drowning in candlelight. I stopped, frozen, and burst into tears. I fell to my knees, sobbing uncontrollably, my glasses fogging up. Pinned to the earth, I could feel a hand on my shoulder and I heard a voice. "Can I help you?" She bent down and took the flowers from my hand and helped me from my knees. She led me to the obelisk. Together we placed my flowers amongst the flickering candles and flowers. She stood silently by me and I stared at the name on the monument. I searched for the words. My body hummed. The only words that came into my head, "Thank you." So it's really good. And there's the final picture that he took of that day of Beethoven's grave. And as I said before, there's pictures littered throughout. There's pictures of Nina Simone's concert that he took the gun from. So yeah, there's lots to look for in this book. Highly recommended. Highly recommended. Do check it out. As it stands for things that I've either read recently or am currently reading, I am halfway through Ethan Hawke's A Bright Ray of Darkness, which is all about the theatre. Really enjoying it. I'm going to try and finish this today. Recently, I finished Susanna Kayson's Girl Interrupted. Very, very good. Almost like vignette sort of thing of that time period and during the counterculture of the 1960s. Also, if you read this, think about reading Sylvia Plath or even I can't remember the other girl's name, but she wrote Prozac Nation. So it's in that vein sort of thing. So Girl Interrupted. About a month or two ago, I read Cherry by Nico Walker. I did record a video on it, but I got deleted, so I've got to try and find my notes and talk about it more. I've got that wonderful cover of the skulls on there, so that's pretty good. And then after that, I'm going to start Irvine Welsh's Filth. Now, not just start, but I'm actually going to restart because, as you can see from the bookmark, I got about a third of the way through this, and then I put it down. It's a filthy book, but I quite liked it, so I'm going to get back to it. Yeah, Irvine Welsh's Filth. Most people would know it from Trainspotting, which I recently watched as well. Good movie. So that's it, yeah. If you have any thoughts, leave a comment below and I'll try and get back to them. I've been off YouTube for at least 2 months now, so it's quite a lot I have to get back to and a lot of people I need to respond to. Other than that, have a good day, everyone. See ya. Bye.